What we've got in front of us is we've got a president that is committed to expanding good paying jobs in construction, in advanced manufacturing, in a clean energy sector, and really making sure that those are not just good paying jobs, that they're union jobs. And our job is to make sure that this time around, everybody benefits from these kinds of job creations. So making sure that folks that have been historically underrepresented in these kinds of jobs, women, folks of color, justice impacted communities, that they're actually centered in this moment.
Hello, powerful people. Welcome back to the Power at Work blog. My name is Seth Harris. I'm a senior fellow at the Burns Center for Social Change, and I'm delighted to have you here for a very important blogcast, this one about women and women of color in the building and construction trades. We'll talk with the director of the U.S. Department of Labor's Women's Bureau about her role advocating for tradeswomen and tradeswomen of color at the very highest levels of government. And we will talk with a leader and a couple of members, also sort of member leaders of the Rhode Island Women in Trades, about what life is like for tradeswomen and tradeswomen of color on the job site, on construction job sites. What have they experienced? What does it look like? What are the barriers that they encounter? And we'll discuss local and regional efforts to increase the number of women entering the trades. And the big issue is, how do we not only get them into the trades, get them into apprenticeship programs so that they can get into trades, but how do we keep them there, given the barriers that they face on the job site? So that'll be our topic for today. But before we get to that discussion, I want to be blunt with you. The Power Work blog is not the only purveyor of good quality content about workers, about worker power, about collective action available to you. And for that reason, the Power at Work blog is immensely proud to be a partner with the Labor Radio Podcast Network. The Labor Radio Podcast Network connects over 100 radio shows and podcasts. To learn more about the network and to find other labor radio shows and podcasts, visit www.laborradionetwork.org. And if you want to listen to or download any or all of the Power at Work blogcasts, they're available for streaming and download on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast. So just go to your favorite commercial podcast provider, search Power at Work or Power at Work blog, and you will find us. And when you do find us, you can help us out by giving us a 5-star rating, and that will help other people to find our content. They'll be grateful. I'm already grateful that you're here today. So today we're talking about diversity in the building and construction trades and efforts at the national, regional, and local levels to increase the number of tradeswomen and tradeswomen of color. We'll be talking, first of all, with Wendy Chun-Hoon, who is the director of the U.S. Department of Labor's Women's Bureau, and we'll be talking about her efforts and the Bureau's efforts to influence the work of other cabinet departments, particularly the cabinet departments that are giving out hundreds of billions of dollars as part of this massive set of public investments that President Biden and Congress made possible. We'll discuss the Women's Bureau's own funding of local and regional organizations working directly with local building trades unions, tradeswomen of color, to try to address this issue. And then we will turn to the local and regional discussion. Let me first say that Director Chun-Hoon has held senior positions in Maryland state government and private philanthropy. For the last 10 years, she led Family Values at Work. That was not that hard to say. I don't know why I stumbled over that. She led Family Values at Work, a national network of grassroots coalitions that have won more than 60 new paid leave policies that brought new rights to 55 million workers and their loved ones. And they also fought for access to childcare and fair wages and employment conditions for all kinds of workers. Director Chun-Hoon, as I said, will talk about this issue of bringing more women and women of color into the building and construction trades and her efforts at the national level. But then we're also going to turn to the local and regional level, and we'll talk with Anita Bruno, who is the founder and executive director of the Rhode Island Women in the Trades. And let me honestly say, The only reason that we're doing this blogcast is because of Anita Bruno. She and her organization, Rhode Island Women in Trades, are hosting a regional labor standards conference. And that was the motivation for this blogcast. We wanted to talk about this issue leading into her conference. So if it weren't for Anita, we wouldn't be doing this blogcast today. So thank you very much, Anita. The conference that she'll be hosting will take place all day on March 9th in Providence, Rhode Island. She'll talk about it during the course of the blogcast. And we're also joined by two tradeswomen who'll be participating in that conference and also have been leaders of Rhode Island Women in Trades. And let me say, this is not an issue for them. This is their lives. This is their work lives. So this really matters to them. So you'll get to hear them talk about what it's like on a construction job site for women and women of color, and a little insight into an experience that frankly is more challenging than it needs to be. Sinade Wadsworth is a union carpenter in New York City. Jeannine Giguere-Gagnon is a retired union carpenter, and she's been the treasurer of the Rhode Island Women in Trades. Let me just say, lots and lots of people are working on this issue, and we could have invited a lot of people to join in. So, for example, our friends at North America's Building Trades Union are now hosting an annual conference called Tradeswomen Build Nations that had more than 4,000 participants. We'll talk a little bit about that in the blogcast. So they are actively engaged in this effort. They are trying to use pre-apprenticeship programs to bring more diverse populations into their membership. So we could have talked to a lot of people, but we really wanted to focus on the national level and the work of the Women's Bureau, an undervalued, underappreciated, underfunded organization that is just terrific. And we wanted to shine a light on them in this blogcast. And also a very important local and regional leadership organization, Women in the Trades. There are other women in trades around the country. We're not choosing one. We just happened to have this conference coming up, so we used it as an excuse to get these terrific folks on our blogcast. Let me just tell you one other thing. Something you're going to notice is, so I don't know if this is a technological breakthrough, but this is the first ever blogcast where we had one of our guests participating from a car on her phone. So it'll be obvious to you which one that is, and there may be some challenges with the sound as a consequence of that, but the substance is the most important thing. So we wanted to show you the whole thing, technological challenges and all. We appreciate your indulgence of us. We're not a multi-million-dollar organization. We do this on pennies and volunteer work from some really terrific people. So, but we bring you what we can with what we have. So those are our guests. You are our audience. We're ready to get our conversation about women and women of color in the trades going. Enjoy. We are so delighted to have all of you here today to talk about an issue that I know you care about tremendously. Our audience cares about it. I care about it a great deal, and that's tradeswomen and tradeswomen of color in the building and construction industry. And we've got a lot of guests, so I'm going to stop talking and I'm not going to stop talking, but I'm going to jump right into the questioning because they want to hear from you more than they want to hear from me. So, Director, let me start with you. I watched your 2022 speech to the Tradeswomen Build Nations conference that's sponsored by North America's Building Trades Unions. Let me also say, the first 3 minutes of that video when you were being brought into the room is among the most exciting pieces of video I have ever seen. I mean, it was like a pep rally, but everybody was on caffeine. It was so exciting to watch, and it looked like you were almost overcome by how exciting it was. There was dance music and people doing an arch for you to run through. Wow, it was really thrilling. But I'm more interested in the substance of your speech. And I thought you did a really terrific job explaining that there's been progress in this space, but as you said, we've got a long, long way to go. And so let me I'm going to repeat back some of what you said, some of the numbers that you gave in that speech. You said the number of tradeswomen reached its highest level in 2021. The number of tradeswomen and women apprentices has doubled over the last 30 years, which is the lifespan of the grant program we're going to be talking about, the Women in Non-Traditional Occupations program. You said that the number of Black and Latina apprentices has increased, but you also said that only 14% of apprentices and fewer than 4% of the workforce in the skills trades are women, and in particular, women of color.
Yeah.
And you also cited an Institute of Women's Policy Research survey that found that 44%, this was really a shocking statistic to me, 44% of tradeswomen are contemplating leaving the industry. And I thought you summed it up well. There were 4,000 plus women at that conference, tradeswomen at that conference. And you said, and I think you're right, a lot of them were going to return to job sites that was not going to look anything like that room. It was going to be overwhelmingly men, maybe entirely men except for them, and mostly white men. At the same time, President Biden has secured unprecedented public investments for the construction industry, hundreds of billions of dollars. You know this better than anybody. Bipartisan infrastructure law, Inflation Reduction Act, Chips and Sciences Act, others. And those public investments have sparked massive private investments in things like manufacturing construction and green energy production and transmission. So construction employment is going to grow. It's going to continue to grow. And there's a big question about whether women, and particularly women of color, are going to get a fair share of the good union jobs these investments are going to create. And that's why we're here today. And that's a big centerpiece, I know, of the work that you're doing. So I want to start with this. Director, is there a sense of urgency in Washington around these issues? And do you feel confident that there's going to be meaningful progress sometime soon?
Absolutely. And if that room was any testament, in addition to friends like Anita and Sinade, who were there in the room, the answer is absolutely yes. So, this really is, as you said, Seth, and I'm really glad you're bringing us together for this conversation. This is a absolutely historic moment in infrastructure investments. I mean, these are investments that we haven't seen as a country since the time when we built the first highway system back in the Eisenhower days. So what we've got in front of us is we've got a president that is committed to expanding good paying jobs in construction, in advanced manufacturing, in a clean energy sector, and really making sure that those are not just good paying jobs, that they're union jobs. And our job is to make sure that this time around, everybody benefits from these kinds of job creation. So making sure that folks that have been historically underrepresented in these kinds of jobs, women, folks of color, justice impacted communities, that they're actually centered in this moment. Is it going to happen? Again, to the testament of some of the women and tradeswomen on the phone, absolutely. What I would say to make sure that everyone on the call knows who the Women's Bureau is, because we are one of the most historic agencies of the Department of Labor, but also one of the smaller agencies, is we do this in three ways. First and foremost, and you mentioned this when you opened, Seth, we have a grant program that is called Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations. So the short name is WANTO. You're right. It has this legislation that enables the grant program has been around for about 30 years. And this really is designed to make sure that we are laser focused on recruitment, training, also retention of women in jobs where they are vastly underrepresented. So exactly what we're talking about in infrastructure, construction, advanced manufacturing, clean energy jobs. And what it does is it provides technical assistance through community-based organizations, like you're going to hear from Anita and Rhode Island Women in the Trades. It provides technical assistance to both employers, to unions, increasingly to public sector project owners, as all of this infrastructure moves from the federal government into communities, into cities across the country, and making sure that we're using best practice to attract and retain women and other underrepresented populations in these jobs. These are investments that have made their way across the country. There's a WANTO grantee, close to wherever you are. So we'll make sure that you know how to get in touch with them and that you know about the work. I want to say two other things about the Women's Bureau's role in this. We have, pretty significant both data capacity, but also policy analysis capacity. And so what we've done is we've taken all the lessons from WANTO over the years, the great work, and we packaged it into something that we familiarly call the Equity Toolkit. We'll make sure that everybody has a link to that. But it really is, all of the documentation of those best practices, examples of how programs have successfully recruited and then trained and also retained increasing numbers of women in these occupations. And third, and maybe we can get to more conversation about this, Women's Bureau is really playing a leadership role in a brand new initiative hosted by the Department of Labor called the Good Jobs Initiative. But it is in partnership with all of the agencies across the federal government that you mentioned have received funds from bipartisan infrastructure law, from the CHIPS and Science Act, from the Inflation Reduction Act. And so structuring agreements between our agencies to really figure out how we make sure that these jobs we're creating are in fact those good paying union jobs, and that we're guaranteeing a broader pathway for women, communities of color, justice impacted communities into these jobs. And a couple of examples of this, and we can hopefully talk more about this.
Let me ask you about that.
Yeah.
I want to get into. I want to sort of split those things apart. There are
Great.
two parts of the strategy that you just articulated that I want to go a little bit deeper on, and I'm going to start with that last point that you made, because I've always felt that the Women's Bureau punches way above its weight. Right. In government terms, this is a very small agency. A few dozen people, $23 million, which is in federal government terms is not even pocket change, right? It is a very small amount of money. Yet over the 100+ years of the history of the Women's Bureau, it has used, as you said, research, policy analysis, grant making, public and private advocacy to dramatically improve the lives of women in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about there are two things I want to talk about. The first one I want to talk about with you is the advocacy work that the Women's Bureau is doing inside the federal government. You talked about it in the context of the Good Jobs Initiative, which is a much broader initiative in the Labor Department. Mm-hmm. Take us inside that, because most people don't ever get to be in those rooms where somebody like you is talking to somebody like Secretary Gina Raimondo at the Commerce Department, or talking to Secretary Pete Buttigieg at the Transportation Department, or their staffs about doing the right thing in this context. So I'm not asking you to betray any confidences here, but take us inside those conversations. What does it look like? How do you do it? How do you move them?
Well, again, because of the leadership of this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, and a real commitment to a couple of North Stars, right? One, these are going to be good paying jobs. They're going to be union jobs. And they're also going to guarantee access for all the folks that have been underrepresented in these kinds of infrastructure jobs. So how we do it is we talk very concretely about how the dollars are structured as they head out of the federal government and into communities across the country to make sure that those things happen, those North Stars happen. And so things like you mentioned the Commerce Department, one of the important commitments that they've made through the CHIPS program office is to make sure that any project, for example, that is over $150 million of investment, comes with it a really robust childcare plan. We know, again, women are still bearing the majority of caregiving in our families, and without adequate investments in care infrastructure, childcare, elder care, things like paid leave, it means that we are going to sacrifice where we work, how many hours we can work, and thoughts about what your career could be going forward. So back to that important commitment by the Commerce Department about childcare, that's a game changer to see employers, communities, mayors, cities, workers, unions, all invested in making sure that there's an adequate childcare plan that goes along with job growth in your community. Game changer. We just got back from Oregon, did a trip with the secretary and Representative Bonamici last week, and really saw this in action, talking about semiconductor training programs in the Portland Community College system, and the entire room, employers to workers to young people to the community college, and of course city leadership, is talking about the importance of investing in childcare along with this kind of job growth. So that's how it happens, real commitment, but also really tangible, concrete strategies like that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I want to talk about another strategy, because this will be the transition to going to Anita and talking about what she's doing regionally and locally. But Director, I want to talk with you about grant making.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the WANTO grants. Very, very important. Again, comparatively pennies that the federal government is able to spend on this program. $5 million for how many tens of millions of women who work and who would like to have access to great union jobs in the trades or in manufacturing and other places. But we'll lobby Congress for more money for you in just a minute. But I want to focus on the grant making. What is it that you are hoping those grants are going to produce? When you put that money out, what are you hoping to get back?
Yeah, you're right. This is pennies, I think you said, on the dollar, in terms of the kinds of massive infrastructure investments. But here's the thing: the track record of the WANTO program is well established. Anita, I know you're going to talk about this. These are very concrete strategies, again, driven through community-based organizations that are closest to the folks that they're serving, closest to their communities. They know and see the gaps in the workforce, in the demand for women and other folks that have been underrepresented in these jobs. And so closest to the solution, closest to the people, and they're the ones providing direct technical assistance to employers, to unions, to public sector project owners as these dollars are coming down. And they're things very practical, making sure that we're addressing the need to invest in supportive services. It can look like childcare, but it can also look like pre-apprenticeship training. It can look like last mile transportation and other kinds of financial supports to make sure that while you're talking about real strategies that recruit, really, really clear recruitment. I love the tradeswomen who say you gotta see it to be it. So the more that we can get women, tradeswomen out there recruiting other folks, that's the best strategy when you're talking about training, making sure that you can, again, get to the training. We're talking about early hours childcare. We're talking about other supportive services. And then retaining folks, it really matters that you do see other folks that look like you on the job, that we're addressing things that often force people to leave the job, whether that's gender-based violence and harassment, whether that's other kinds of bullying and discrimination, but important to address all of those things across that pathway. And so this is what the WANTO grantees are doing. They're teaching, maybe it is a smaller investment for each of the WANTO grants. We've got way more demand for these grants than we can actually supply, but they're doing an important leave behind. Once you know how to do this work, you're teaching everyone, and it becomes a really important game changer in a local community.
Yeah. So let me just say, I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you how much money should be in this program, but Congress could easily increase this program tenfold, and that would not meet the demand around the United States. There is so much need for these kinds of programs around the United States.
You can stay up to date with the latest news about workers, worker power, and unions by subscribing to the Power at Work blog. You'll receive the weekly download, a Power at Work newsletter sent straight to your inbox. The weekly download collects about 24 of the week's articles, academic studies, press releases, podcasts, and videos from across the internet. We find the stories and deliver them directly to you. So subscribe to the weekly download right now on the front page of the Power at Work blog. Go to poweratwork.us.
One place where there is this program is Rhode Island. So Anita, I want to turn to you and pick up with you where Director Chun-Hoon left off. So the WANTO grant program is all about expanding pathways for women into the trades, among other occupations, and also retaining women and women of color in the trades when we're able to get them there. And so Rhode Island Women in the Trades was one of only 5 organizations to get a WANTO grant in 2023. So congratulations to you. It must have been quite an application. And the purpose of your grant was to, and I think I'm quoting here, is to provide support and pre-apprenticeship training to women seeking employment in a non-traditional trades occupation, exactly as the director was just describing. So, Anita, take us inside some of the details of how you're going to use that money to accomplish those goals.
Thank you, Seth. First, I'd like to give you a little background. I'm a graduate of a program that was a WANTO recipient, non-traditional employment for women out in New York City. And if it wasn't for that program and then receiving that WANTO grant, I wouldn't even be in the trades now. So I graduated that program, got into the Carpenters Union in New York City in 2007, and then now we've made history. So as I transferred my book into Rhode Island about 10 years ago, there was about probably less than 10 of us carpenters in the union at the time. Jeannine was one of them. And there wasn't really any supports or services for us as women, or even anybody to talk to or anybody to kind of navigate the environment or the work with, right? Even just as simple as learning tips and tricks on the trade, right? How to make my job a little bit easier. Like I've done concrete the last 5 years. So on heavy roads and highways, when you're building concrete forms, it's like a Tetris game, right? And you're putting all the forms together. But after you pour the concrete and the pressure's on them, it's really hard to get them apart. So it was a fellow trade sister that kind of taught me how to hit the T's, the locks, to get them out easier instead of sitting there kind of blood in my knuckles trying to get them out, right? So just those kind of simple things. And so the WANTO grant for us now has allowed us to build upon our sisterhood, which is very important to us, understanding that, like Wendy mentioned, there are other things that go on in the field besides making good money, right? So the harassment part of it, and understanding that harassment is not just sexual, right? Anything that's led to make you feel uncomfortable on a job site. Bathroom breaks, OSHA still recommends female bathrooms. It's still not regulated. It's still just a recommendation. So how do women navigate these systems when usually I'm on the job site, I'm the only woman, and usually the only woman or the only person of color. So I don't have any other trade sisters to say, hey, like, how did you navigate this? Or, hey, how did you navigate that? So the WANTO funding allowed us to give a certain percentage of the money to support services for women and organizing women and outreach for women. And that includes sisterhood. And then it includes, when we talk about retention, it includes opportunities to promote leadership or resources to seek how to find leadership or how to get training for leadership. Rhode Island, we have the Institute for Labor Study and Research, which promotes steward training and promotes leadership training within the union industry. So understanding how to navigate those, where those resources are, where those support services are, where the education is. And then again, retention is huge. So that includes training opportunities. A lot of times I've been on job sites where I've been a third-year apprentice or even a journeywoman, and the first-year apprentices up there under the wing of the foreman, learning how to read blueprints and learning how to be the next foreman, while the women that were there for years are kind of overlooked and overstepped, sometimes, sadly, even being utilized as lifelong apprentices and not being able to learn their trades. So the WANTO grant, and Wendy, thank you to the Women's Bureau for championing something like this, allows us to be able to not only produce more women and get the outreach that this is needed, but to support women while they're in, to support them while they're going through it. And I like to brag that Rhode Island Women in the Trades is not just a pre-apprentice program, we're a lifetime support system for women that are already in the trades and for women that will graduate and go into the trade, so that they always have a place, they always have a space, they always have mentorship, they always have another sister to be able to talk to about whatever the issue is, whether it be a childcare barrier, whether it be um, whether it be an angry boyfriend or husband that is not understanding how they're surrounded by men all day, or not understanding how they're able to make more money than them because there's different instances that come in. Um, and then the best part is to see women that might have gone in Rhode Island. Public assistance for a family of three makes $520 a month. So for women, and we have a really strong relationship with the Department of Human Services. We work really close with them to make sure that we're able to offer these women these opportunities. And so for women going from $520 a month for a family of three to making 20, 30 to $40 an hour is a huge difference. That's a life changer. It's a game changer, right? That's generational wealth building. So be able to do that and to be able to offer that and see these women's faces glow and smile as they're learning the hands-on that we're able to teach them. And we don't only just teach them about the trades and about all the options in the industry, we also teach them about how to manage the money, right? Because I personally gone living paycheck to paycheck before I understood about financial literacy. And we want to make sure that our women are having an understanding to do the same. We bring in people that talk about home ownership, mortgages, the importance of and the difference in renting and owning. And then we talk about how to use your skills as investments. Like if you wanted to become a real estate agent or flip houses or do side work, right? Like the carpenters are really good as a union member. We have the ability to go to our union school and learn different trades for free. Well, it's part of our union dues. But it's not that I wouldn't have to go to another college or another trade shop school and pay to build cabinets or to learn how to do cabinet making. I could go to my local apprenticeship and learn how to do cabinet making, and then I could create a side business on top of that. And that's teaching them how to navigate the ups and downs of the construction industry, because we're always working ourselves out of a job, right? When the bridge is built, the job's over. When the
Right.
building's built, the job's over. So how do you navigate that, and how do you understand that yes, we make really good money, and we can navigate it as long as we have the tools, the resources, and the knowledge on how to do that. So I take a lot of pride in what we're able to offer these women. And then most recently, we launched an education arm. I've had a lot of a lot of women tell me, Anita, if I knew about this years ago, I would have been in the construction industry. And so now we do panel presentations for 11th and 12th grade girls to get them the information, and the contractors are really supportive of that because that's a recruitment pipeline for them. But we also get into the 6th and 7th grade girls. We have a really good partnership with our career and tech educators. I sit on the advisory board for Providence Career and Tech. The Providence Career and Tech director is on our board. And we work really closely to make sure that we're getting into the schools. So we do a 3 to 4 hour workshop with some of these 6th and 7th grade girls. We supply tool bags with about 30 different tools in there. We teach them what the tools are, what they do, and then we get to build like a little hands-on project. And then we finish with empowerment, sisterhood, right? The girls circle, what I like about being a girl, who's my role models, those kind of attributes, to build up their self-esteem and make sure that they are empowered within themselves as well. And I've had women come back and tell me, Anita, my daughter was in the bathroom fixing the sink or fixing the shower head with the wrench that you gave them. So it's been paying forward fully.
That's terrific. So I want to ask you about the regional labor standards conference that you have coming up, and that was actually the reason that you and I started talking about doing this blogcast. This was your idea, so I'm going to credit you here. But in about a week and a half, you're going to have a regional standards labor standards conference in Rhode Island, and how does that fit together with a larger strategy that you were just articulating?
So first, it's on March 9th, which is the last day of Women in Construction Week. And it's a regional labor standards conference celebrating women. So we're pulling all of these resources together. Again, knowledge is power. And a lot of women, especially women business owners, women entrepreneurs, and tradeswomen, don't have all of the information. So then they're left not empty-handed, but sort of on below the line instead of having an opportunity to get above the line. So we want to bring them these resources. So we put together a few different panels. One panel being Rhode Island Women in the Trades, and that'll be moderated by our own Rhode Islander local, who is one of the deputy directors of the Women's Bureau, Gail Golden, with myself, Sinade, Jeannine, and the chair of our board, Tara Freeman, talking about Rhode Island Women in the Trades and our programming and what we're able to do there. We're going to have a Department of Labor panel to talk about the infrastructure and the Biden Act and everything that this administration is doing to not only support women, but to make great jobs, right? And then within those great jobs and within that great funding, how we're talking about uplifting women in those and what we can all do to work together. And then one of the panels is going to be talking about the new Davis-Bacon labor standards, because again, information is power, and we need to know what our rights are and what our responsibilities are within those rights, right? Because it's not just what our rights are, but it is also what our responsibilities fall under that as well. Our HUD director will be talking about Section 3, which is affirmative action. Again, why that's so important, because when we talk about compliance and enforcement and making sure women are on these jobs and having that understanding of our federal regulations, 6.9% women, if it's federally funded, should have those work hours. And we were able to see that in the Encore Casino in Boston when our OFCCP, our Women's Bureau, and our local contractors worked together in solidarity to make sure that they were promoting those recruitment pipelines. And to my knowledge, that was the project with the most women in history on one project, from representing all different trades. That's huge. That's history. That's women's history. And then we're also going to have a business panel, and that's really talking or catered more towards women businesses, because we don't want to leave them out, right? Women in the trades also leads to women entrepreneurship, right? So if a woman wants to open her own contracting company, how would she become signatory to a union? How does she become bankable? How does she become bondable? How does she navigate those kind of nuances and understand that stuff? So that's the information that we want to bring to Rhode Island and regionally. So we're inviting trade sisters from New York to Maine to come on down to Rhode Island. We're hoping kind of in the middle, and it's kind of like a good journey for everybody. We will be feeding them lunch for that long journey. But we think it's information. Yeah, we just think it's really important information for women to understand. Again, it's the information, getting them out those resources.
Terrific. March 9th in Providence, Rhode Island, and we'll put up a link in the post associated with this blogcast to let people know where it's going to be. We will publish
Thank
this
you.
blogcast before it comes out, before the conference on March 9th. Jeannine and Sinade, so you've been on the ground, you've done the work, you've been on the job sites. My guess is dozens of them at this point in your careers, and I say that with love and respect. And you've worked with dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe more skilled trades workers of all kinds, not just carpenters like yourselves, but others. So I want to get you to comment on one of the statistics that was in Director Chun-Hoon's 2022 speech to the Tradeswomen's Conference. And I mentioned it before, but I want to mention it again. She told her audience that 44% of tradeswomen are considering quitting their jobs. I believe she also said, I may get this wrong, Director, you'll correct me if I do, that around 50% of those tradeswomen reported that harassment was an important reason for them thinking about quitting. Let me start with you, Jeannine, because you're what kids would call an OG, or in your case, an OC, an original carpenter, one of the first women, maybe the first in Rhode Island.
No. There were others before me.
Okay, but one of the earliest ones. let me start with you, and then Sinade, I'm going to ask you the same question. Are you surprised by those numbers? Are you surprised that there are so many tradeswomen who seem to be looking towards the door?
No, that doesn't surprise me at all. Early in my career, I made a commitment to myself that I would not quit, just because the feeling of wanting to quit and just like every day feeling like I don't know if I can do this anymore. Because of harassment, because emotionally it just takes a big toll. And then if you have children at home and, there's too many forces against, you as a female, succeeding in this. We get laid off a lot, especially once we reach journeyman's position, because there's no incentive from the government to keep journey women on. There is as apprenticeship, so sometimes it's you as soon as you get more apprentices, then the journey women don't have jobs because they want to. The people who are providing the jobs just want to make a profit, as much profit as they can, and they get money from the government, especially like Department of Transportation, to put on apprentices on the job, and there isn't that for journeyman positions. So you get laid off a lot, and you're sitting there waiting for a job and having a hard time getting one. And so, if you're not working, you're looking to some other place to get income. And so that doesn't surprise me at all, and not at all.
Tell me, I want to ask you a little bit about sort of what it's like on the work site. This is going to be a big thing to put aside, but putting the harassment aside, most work sites, particularly when you are involved in learning how to do the job by actually doing the job, work-based learning, which is the centerpiece of apprenticeship, but it's also the centerpiece of on-the-job training. That's how most people learn what they're doing and become better and better and better at what they do. Talk a little bit about the dynamics on the work site in that context. Did you get the kind of mentorship and support and on-the-job training that your male counterparts got?
Yes and no. It depended on when I came in. I'm 73 years old now. I retired a little while ago. And when I came on, there were very few women. They didn't know what to do with women. Everything was based on, I want my children to have this opportunity that I did. And as more and more people went to college, a lot of the carpenters, their children didn't want to be a carpenter. They saw how hard it was. So it opened up somewhat for females and other, people of color too, women of color and men of color, which didn't happen before, because it was this place where the white men wanted it to be all white, and this is ours. It was also a mob mentality too. This is for us, and they didn't want to share that resource with anyone. And so that was the kind of mentality. So there were some people who went by that mentality that didn't want to teach you anything. And then there were some that wanted to see a change. And, they knew how hard it was for them when they came in, and so you had to find these people that were willing to teach you. And so I took on the air of wanting to be liked, which is, like you hated them, but you had to force yourself to be likable, because that was the only way to get in and stay in. And so, you had to compromise yourself in what you believed too. And you couldn't show that you were angry at these men. You couldn't show that. If you did, it's like you were blacklisted.
Yeah. So now talk a little bit. You've been on a lot of job sites. You're from my
Mhm.
hometown of New York, so that means you're tough as nails and smart as they come, like we all are from New York. Um, but I want you to help us to understand what you think needs to be done, both to recruit more women and women of color into the trades and to retain folks like you and Jeannine in the trades jobs that they have right now, the trades occupations that they have right now. What should we be doing?
Okay, so I'm going to say first and foremost, more support for the Women's Bureau, because I too am a graduate of non-traditional employment for women, and I wouldn't be where I'm at without that program. Um, I joined the Carpenters Union in 2012, and NEW has been such a support system for me because my mentor, who's also a carpenter, was my teacher, who I became her colleague, and then she is now retired. She's the first female to retire from her position in New York City. And I say that to say that what's needed is more funding, right? We can't do this on our own. You know, Jeannine alluded to the struggles and the past practices of the unions. However, um, talking about that 50% want to leave and the retention problem, it retention was never a problem before because it was your brothers or your cousins and your uncles, right? So now more than ever, when it becomes a level playing field because of diversity, right? People are not as caring as before. So Rhode Island Women in the Trades, make sure that you have that support system in place. So you always have a mentorship. If you have a problem, you have a sister to call. But Rhode Island Women in the Trades wouldn't be as successful if they didn't receive the WANTO grant, right? So we have a once in a lifetime opportunity with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, thanks to President Biden and the team. And people like us who are close to the people, right, and are that much closer to the solution, is the answer because we've been through it. We know what's needed, but most importantly, we want to help, right? So I wouldn't be where I'm at, but it doesn't stop me from going back and helping to bring more people in because I believe in what I do. I believe in what the union brings to the table, and the pathway to the middle class is extremely important, especially now.
Very helpful, I think, and insightful, particularly about the role of just peer support on a work site. It's something that a lot of us just take for granted, but
Yes.
In a construction work site, it can be the difference between life and death. It can be the difference between succeeding and failing. It can be the difference between keeping your job and losing your job. It's so critically important. Anita, I want to turn to you on solutions, and then Director, I'm going to come to you for the last big question of our blogcast because I know you all have actual jobs to go to, and I'm going to let you do that in just a second. But Anita, in thinking about solutions, you and Rhode Island Women in Trades are vigorous advocates for the Safe from Hate pledge, which promises zero tolerance for any kind of hate or discrimination on job sites. Tell us a little bit about the pledge and who you're asking to take it and how it's going.
Thank you so much. I love the Safe from Hate pledge. First, we didn't think of it. That comes out of Oregon. Um, I was blessed to hear it on a tradeswoman chat task force meeting. But because of our relationship with OFCCP, we were able to get it endorsed by the Federal Department of Labor as a best practice. What I love about the Safe from Hate pledge is it's not picking one barrier. It's not just talking about recruitment. It's not just talking about retention. It's talking about the need for all of it and how we can all organize to work together to push that safe from hate mentality. And it ends with a zero tolerance. So when we talk about harassment, discrimination, women spending their bathroom breaks crying, women waking up in the morning, maybe not wanting to go, even though we know that this is a great opportunity to be able to pay for a living above a livable wage without having to decide, am I going to pay rent or am I going to buy food? And maybe still having a couple dollars to be able to save or to put your kids in hockey or in baseball, or my daughter was in dance. So my career allowed me to do that. But I faced discrimination and harassment on the job as well. And I faced blacklisting for speaking up about it. And so the Safe from Hate incorporates that zero tolerance. So that means no more of, hey, this guy harassed me. Oh, if he does it again. No, there's no more if he does it again, because if he does it again, what we learned February 14th, 2017, we had a female sister carpenter out in California, Weedy Hicks, was bludgeoned to death on the job site. And that's because there was no zero tolerance. So the gentleman harassed her, and I shouldn't even say gentleman, the monster harassed her over a period of time. And she probably did complain about it. It was probably pacified, like, oh, you have to have thick skin to be in this industry, or that's the industry you're in, or it's a male dominated industry, or so the things that we are often told as women on the job site. And if it was zero tolerance, she might still be alive today, because as soon as she said, he's harassing me, zero tolerance means zero tolerance. So it's no more, oh no, I know that guy, I respect him, or oh, if he does it again. That's it, right? And sometimes understanding that women don't always want the gentleman or the person that's being alleged to be harassing, they don't always want him thrown in jail or to have a lawsuit. It's not that extreme. Sometimes we just want a different partner. Sometimes we just want a different job site, right? So having that safe space, or that safe person that is beholden to the member, not the union, not the contractor, but the member. And even thinking about that, it's not just women that are harassed on the job site, men are harassed too. So understanding that mentality or that culture, the Safe from Hate Pledge addresses that. And it also addresses leadership, it addresses training, it addresses retention and how you utilize all of that to retain women and minorities. Because if we're focused on recruitment, it doesn't matter how many people we recruit if they're not staying. If it's not a healthy work site and they don't stay, then all the recruitment in the world is not going to matter. If we're recruiting them, we're spending millions for apprenticeship, we're getting them into the trades, and then they're leaving a year later, that's money down the drain, and that's not the best place for our money. But I see one of the biggest solutions is funding the Women's Bureau. And I don't say that as just a WANTO recipient. I say that as being a friend to the Women's Bureau. I say that as being invited to information sessions. I say that as understanding that the way they're able to educate, even with the peanuts that we all know that they get, is huge, right? It's hugely helpful to all the women across the nation, not just Rhode Island, not just New York, but for all the women across the nation that say, hey, I need help, right? And it's not just construction, it's all non-traditional occupations. So that means that they are an education and a resource for women that don't know where to go, for women that want better, for women that are in dead-end relationships, for women that are in hostile relationships, for women that are working 3 to 4 jobs to make ends meet, right? Like we see, we're in Black History Month, and I was watching the show on Madam C.J. Walker, how she went from a washerwoman to the first self-made multimillionaire woman in the world, right? That's Black history. But thinking about those kind of things wouldn't be made possible if it wasn't for the education and the resources by the Women's Bureau. So fund WANTO. That is one of the biggest solutions. Fund the Women's Bureau. Director, that's a solution.
Director, I don't think I knew this was going to happen, but this turned into a blogcast all about getting more money for the Women's Bureau, and I'm all for it. So I want to give you the last word. And I want to ask you a really big question. You take it anywhere you want. We just got a couple of minutes left, but I'm really eager to hear what you have to say about this. So if we invite you back, and I want to put you on notice that there's a high probability we are going to invite you back in about a year, and ask you, how's it going? Where are we? Or you could take it out 5 years, and you're in the first term of President Kamala Harris's presidency, and you're still at the Women's Bureau. That would be my hope. Where are we with respect to this issue? What will have changed? What can we hope will have changed? And what will still be left to be done?
Thank you so much for this conversation. I also didn't know that this was going to be a shout out for the Women's Bureau. But here's what I want to say. I think we will be in a different place because just in this one conversation, you saw how, yes, WANTO is a small program, but it has leveraged its footprint many times over because of the leadership that it's invested in across the country, folks in this conversation. And it's really about those very sticky lessons that turn into impact, and are having impact as this infrastructure money is hitting the street and communities across the country. It's what you said, Anita, about how the sharing of those resources happens really quickly once you see it working. So I want to underscore what you said about the lessons about Safe from Hate. There are many programs that we are supporting, that others are supporting, including unions, across the country. Rise Up for Equity in the Pacific Northwest, led by another WANTO grantee, Anu, and Oregon tradeswomen. And they're spreading that model across the country. The ironworkers have Be That One Guy because of Vicki O'Leary's leadership. The SMART sheet metal workers union, SMART, and our friend Leah Rambo, who has just left the Women's Bureau to go run NEW in New York City that everybody has mentioned, has a program called Be For All. These models are spreading very quickly. I want to offer a couple of resources that will help others to know this work. One, on March 5th, we have a webinar coming up with OSHA, Women's Bureau and OSHA and EEOC to really make sure that we're addressing gender-based violence and harassment as a workplace safety issue. It's real, as you said. And so that's coming up on March 5th. We'll make sure everybody has the information. There's one thing that I keep thinking about over and over, and it's actually what sort of set the implementation plan for the Women's Bureau, but also many of us across the federal government, because of the costs that we are bearing now. So bipartisan infrastructure law, I think, had just passed. And the Women's Bureau did a report that really summed up the cost of COVID, which we should have known was coming because these are longstanding patterns where women are really segregated into some of the lowest paying jobs in the country. Mm-hmm. These are the jobs that hold up all the other jobs, like care infrastructure jobs. But they're also vastly underrepresented, as you heard in this conversation, in some of the highest paying, fastest growing jobs. So we are bearing a cost as a country. It doesn't have to be that way. These are billions of dollars every year lost to women's pockets, to their families. And this is the moment to change that. So where we will be in 5 years and 1 year is it will be better than 4%. There is commitment across 4%. I should finish my sentence. 4% of women in the construction trades. We have commitment across the administration, from the president to each of our federal agencies, certainly through the Good Jobs Initiative in the Department of Labor and Women's Bureau, to really leverage the lessons that we have learned through WANTO. We've produced this equity toolkit. We are using it. We are promulgating it. My call to action is for everybody across the country who is spending this money to call on us, learn about these equity toolkit models, bake them into how you're spending the money locally. Look for models that are effective at recruiting and training, and also importantly, retaining women in these amazing jobs. And then invest in them, invest in the supportive services it takes. And Seth, to your question, we will get there. We will be more, and we will be better off as a country as a result.
Great. That's a great way to close. Director Wendy Chun-Hoon, Anita Bruno, Sinade Wadsworth, and Jeannine Giguere-Gagnon. So fantastic to have you here. What a terrific conversation. We really appreciate you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining our blogcast and making it all the way through to the end. I think it was worth it. I think every bit of it was worth it. So thank you very much for sticking with us and for your support of the Power at Work blog. You can connect with the Power at Work blog team on social media. We have pages on LinkedIn and Facebook. Just search Power at Work. Or Power at Work blog. You can find us at Power at Work blog on Twitter, X, and Threads. You can find us at Power at Work on Instagram, TikTok, and Patreon as well. And you can find all the Power at Work blogcasts on YouTube on the Burns Center for Social Changes channel. So go there. You can also, as I said at the beginning of our blogcast, you can download them from any commercial podcast provider. We encourage you to do that. The most important thing for you to do is to go to the front page of the Power at Work blog after you're done with this blogcast and subscribe. And that way we can keep you up on all the content that we're providing here on the Power at Work blog. It's a great way to connect. I want to thank you again for joining us. Encourage you to keep coming back. We've got some great programs coming your way, great articles coming your way. We're looking forward to it. We hope you're looking forward to it too. We'll see you again on the blog very soon.
The Power at Work blog is a project of the Burns Center for Social Change at Northeastern University. The Burns Center develops innovative, participatory, and equitable approaches to solving public problems using new technology. Our faculty and fellows are accomplished, nationally recognized changemakers. Interested in learning more? Go to burns.northeastern.edu and sign up for our mailing list. And you can follow us on social media at Burns Center on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. The Burns Center for Social Change, from demanding change to making it.